Dr. Sarah Mitchell stood in the observation deck of the Galactic Research Station, staring at the assignment on her datapad. The words seemed impossible, yet they glowed there in simple text. Communication specialist needed for the Vorath. Humanity's first chance to understand a species that speaks in silence. Sarah was just a linguistics graduate from Chicago. She studied ancient Earth languages and modern communication theory. Nothing in her background prepared her for alien contact. When the United Nations Xenolinguistics program accepted her application, she thought she would be translating basic greetings or studying simple communication patterns. She never imagined this. "The Vorath don't speak," explained Commander Park, the station's director. He was a serious man with tired eyes. "At least not in any way we understand. They've been here for 6 months. We've tried everything. Sound analysis, electromagnetic scanning, chemical detection, even telepathy tests. Nothing works." Sarah looked through the observation window. In the containment area below, 3 Vorax stood motionless. They were tall beings nearly 8 feet high, with bodies that seemed made of living crystal. Light passed through them in strange ways, creating rainbow patterns on the walls. They were beautiful and completely mysterious. The Watchers who never spoke. "Why do you think I can help?" Sarah asked. Her voice felt small in the huge observation room. Commander Park handed her a file. "Because you wrote your thesis on nonverbal communication in human cultures. Sign language, body language, emotional expression. You understand that communication isn't just about words. The Vorath are trying to tell us something. We just don't know how to listen." Sarah studied the beings below. They moved slowly, gracefully. Sometimes they would touch the walls or each other. Sometimes they would stand perfectly still for hours. Human scientists had been watching them, recording everything, analyzing every movement. But they found nothing that looked like language. "What do they want?" Sarah wondered aloud. "That's what we need you to discover," Commander Park replied. "Earth's government wants to establish relations. The Vorath came peacefully. They landed in the Arizona desert and simply waited. They didn't resist when we brought them here. They don't eat or sleep, as far as we can tell. They just exist and wait. For what, we don't know." Sarah felt a strange pull towards the observation window. One of the Vorath turned, seeming to look directly at her through the glass. Its crystalline face had no features she could recognize, yet she felt it was aware of her presence. The first connection. That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about the Vorath. At 3 a.m, she left her quarters and returned to the observation deck. The station was quiet, most crew sleeping. Emergency lights cast long shadows through the corridors. When Sarah reached the observation room, she found it empty, except for one sleeping security guard. She didn't wake him. Instead, she approached the window and looked down at the Vorath. All 3 stood in the center of their space, perfectly still. As Sarah watched, she noticed something the reports hadn't mentioned. The light passing through their bodies created patterns on the floor. The patterns shifted slowly, changing shape and color. Sarah sat down and simply watched. She didn't try to analyze or understand. She just observed. Minutes passed, then an hour. The patterns continued their slow dance across the floor. Then something changed. One pattern seemed to pulse in rhythm. Sarah found her heartbeat matching it without thinking. The rhythm was peaceful, calming, like waves on a beach. She felt her breathing slow to match it. Without planning to, Sarah placed her hand against the observation window. The cool glass was smooth under her palm. Below, one of the Vorath moved. It approached the window directly beneath her hand. Light from its body formed a pattern on the glass that looked almost like a hand meeting hers. "Hello," Sarah whispered. The light pattern shifted. New colors appeared, soft blues and gentle greens. Sarah felt something she couldn't explain. It wasn't telepathy exactly. It was more like emotion without words. Peace, curiosity, welcome. Sarah spent every free moment at the observation window after that. She stopped trying to analyze the Vorath using traditional methods. Instead, she simply experienced their presence. She noticed that the patterns they created changed based on time of day, on who was nearby, on events happening in the station. When technicians argued near the containment area, the Vorath's light patterns turned sharp and jagged, filled with dark reds and harsh angles. When children from the station's family quarters visited, the patterns became soft and circular, full of gentle yellows and playful movement. "They're responding to emotion," Sarah reported to Commander Park. "Not words or sounds. They communicate through light and pattern, but it's tied to feeling. They're empathic in a way we never tested for." Commander Park frowned. "How can we verify this? How can we communicate if it requires emotion instead of language?" Sarah thought carefully. "Let me try something. Let me enter their space." The request created immediate concern. No human had entered the Vorath containment since the aliens arrived. It seemed too dangerous, too unknown. But Sarah was insistent. "They're not dangerous," she said. "They're just different. They came to Earth peacefully. They've never shown aggression. I think they're frustrated because we keep trying to talk to them in ways they can't understand. Let me try to communicate their way." After 3 days of debate, permission was granted. Sarah went through decontamination procedures and safety briefings. Scientists monitored every biosign. Armed guards stood ready outside the containment area. Sarah wore a simple white suit with no equipment, no recorders, no barriers between her and the Vorath. The meeting. When the containment door opened, Sarah stepped inside. The 3 Voraths stood in their usual positions. For a moment, nothing happened. Then slowly, they began to move toward her. Sarah's heart pounded, but she stood still. She focused on her emotions, trying to project calm and friendliness. The Vorath stopped a few feet away. The light passing through their bodies intensified, creating brilliant patterns all around Sarah. She felt it then, the connection she'd sensed through the window, but much stronger now. It was like standing in warm sunlight, but the warmth came from inside rather than outside. The Vorath weren't speaking to her mind. They were sharing their feelings directly with her heart. Sarah closed her eyes and let herself feel what they were showing her. She saw images, not in her mind but in her emotions. A dying world, beautiful but fading. A desperate search across the stars for help. Earth appearing like a beacon of hope. The Vorath had come not to invade or study, but to ask for aid. Their planet was crystalline, like their bodies, but it was losing its light. The patterns that gave their world life were fading. They needed someone who could understand pattern and light to help them decode what was wrong. They had searched for species that could perceive beyond simple communication, beyond words and sounds, to the deeper language of existence itself. Humans, they believed, had this gift. Humans created art and music. Humans felt deeply and expressed those feelings through countless forms. The Vorath thought maybe, just maybe, humans could help them understand why their world was dying. A bridge between worlds. When Sarah emerged from the containment area 2 hours later, she was crying. The Vorath's plea had been so beautiful and desperate. She immediately called for a meeting with all senior staff. "They need our help," she explained. "Their planet is dying, and they don't know why. They can't communicate it in words because their entire way of existing is based on light patterns and emotional resonance. They came to Earth because they detected something in our broadcasts, our music, our art, our emotional expression. They thought we might be able to help." Commander Park leaned forward. "Help them how? We barely understand them." Sarah pulls up images on the main screen. Their world is like a massive crystalline structure. It should create self-sustaining light patterns, but those patterns are breaking down. They need someone who understands both pattern and emotion to figure out why. I think I can do it, but I'll need resources and time. Over the following weeks, Sarah worked closely with the Vorath. She learned to read their light patterns, to understand the emotional language they spoke. She discovered they had names that were actually feeling signatures, unique emotional patterns that identified each individual. She gave them human names too, to help others on the station relate to them. She called them Hope, Dream, and Light. The Vorath seemed pleased with these names, their patterns brightening when Sarah used them. With the Vorath's guidance, Sarah analyzed the data about their dying world. She discovered something remarkable. The planet's patterns weren't breaking down naturally. They were being disrupted by artificial signals, electromagnetic radiation from technology. The Vorath civilization had advanced so rapidly that their own technology was destroying the light patterns their world needed to survive. The solution: Sarah presented her findings to the Galactic Research Council. They need to understand that progress and technology must balance with their natural world. It's a lesson humanity learned the hard way with climate change and pollution. We can help them find that balance. The proposal was accepted. Earth would send a team to the Vorath homeworld. Sarah would lead the communication efforts. Scientists would help the Vorath modify their technology to work in harmony with their planet's natural patterns instead of disrupting them. On the day the mission was announced, Sarah stood with the Vorath in their containment area one last time. Hope, the eldest of the three, approached her. Its crystalline hand touched hers gently. Sarah felt a wave of gratitude, so pure and strong it took her breath away. "Thank you for listening," she whispered, knowing the Vorath would understand the emotion behind her words even if they couldn't understand the words themselves. "Thank you for teaching me that communication is more than language. It's about truly hearing what others are trying to say, even when they speak in silence." The light patterns surrounding them exploded into brilliant colors: joy, hope, and friendship, transcending the barriers between species. Sarah realized this was what first contact really meant: not just meeting aliens, but truly understanding them; not just speaking to them, but listening with more than ears. As she prepared for the journey to the Vorath homeworld, Sarah thought about her Ord linguistics professor, who had told her that language was the key to understanding. He had been partly right. But what Sarah discovered was deeper. Understanding came not from language alone, but from the willingness to perceive and connect in ways beyond words. Humanity had been trying to make the Vorath speak human languages. Sarah had succeeded by learning to speak theirs, the universal language of emotion, pattern, and shared feeling. In doing so, she had opened a door not just to one alien species, but to a new way of seeing the universe itself. The voyage to the Vorath homeworld took 6 months. Sarah spent every day working with Hope, Dream, and Light, learning more about their people and their civilization. The spacecraft Earth provided was equipped with special chambers where the Vorath could exist comfortably, spaces filled with crystals that helped them maintain their pattern integrity. Sarah discovered the Vorath didn't sleep, but they did enter a rest state where their light patterns became very simple and slow. She learned they didn't eat physical food. Instead, they absorbed energy directly from light sources, which was why they had been so drawn to Earth's sun. She learned their sense of time was different too. What felt like hours to Sarah might feel like moments to them, because they perceived time through pattern cycles rather than linear progression. The ship's crew was small, just 12 humans total, plus the 3 Vorath. There was Dr. Chen, an environmental scientist who specialized in ecosystem restoration. There was Marcus, an engineer who understood harmonic frequencies. There was young Amy Torres, barely 20, who had a gift for mathematics and pattern recognition. Each person had been chosen because they could think beyond traditional boundaries. As they traveled, Sarah taught the crew her methods for communicating with the Vorath. She showed them how to read the light patterns, how to project emotions clearly, how to receive the feelings the Vorath shared. It was like learning to speak with your heart instead of your mouth. First glimpse of crystal. When they finally arrived at the Vorath system, everyone crowded around the viewports. The sight took Sarah's breath away. The Vorath planet hung in space like an enormous jewel. It was indeed crystalline, faceted like a diamond, catching light from its sun and transforming it into cascading rainbows. But even from orbit, Sarah could see the problem. Parts of the planet's surface looked dark and dull, like dead crystal. The light patterns that should have been flowing across the entire world were broken and fragmented. It was like looking at a stained glass window where half the pieces had gone dark. "It's more serious than we thought," Dr. Chen said quietly. "If those dark areas continue spreading, the entire planet will lose its coherence." Hope approached Sarah, its light patterns showing deep sadness. Sarah felt the Vorath's grief like a weight in her chest. This was their home, their world dying before their eyes, and they hadn't known how to stop it. "We'll figure it out," Sarah promised. "That's why we're here." a city of light and shadow. The landing was gentle, a planet's surface with hard crystal, but it had give to it, almost like walking on very thick glass. The Vorath didn't have traditional cities. Instead, they had pattern zones, areas where specific types of light patterns were strongest. These zones served different purposes, like how human cities have residential areas, business districts, and parks. The arrival of humans caused quite a reaction. Thousands of Vorath gathered, their combined light creating patterns so complex and beautiful that Sarah felt tears running down her face. She was feeling their collective greeting, curiosity, hope, fear, and wonder all mixed together. One Vorath approached who was clearly important. Its crystalline body was larger than the others, and the patterns it created were more intricate. Through Hope's translation, Sarah understood this was the Keeper of Patterns, something like a leader or historian. The Keeper touched Sarah's hand, and she experienced a rush of information. She saw the history of the Vorath civilization in emotional snapshots. She felt their joy at discovering technology, their excitement at harnessing electromagnetic energy, their pride at building advanced systems. Then she felt their horror at realizing what they had done, that their own progress was killing their world. They didn't know, Sarah whispered to Dr. Chen. They advanced so fast, they never realized the technology was disrupting the natural patterns. By the time they noticed, the damage was severe. Understanding the problem, the team set up base in a pattern zone near one of the dark areas. Over the following weeks, they analyzed everything. Marcus measured electromagnetic frequencies and found them overwhelming. The Vorath had built generators, communications networks, and energy systems that all operated on wavelengths that interfered with the planet's natural light patterns. It's like their technology is shouting over their planet's voice, Marcus explained. The natural patterns can't maintain themselves against this noise. Amy worked with the Vorath record keepers, beings who preserved pattern memories. She discovered something crucial. Thousands of years ago, before the Vorath developed technology, their planet had experienced a similar darkening during a solar storm. The planet had healed itself by adjusting its pattern frequencies. The planet was alive in a way. Not conscious, but responsive. It could adapt, but only if given the chance. The planet wants to heal, Amy reported. But it can't adjust while being constantly bombarded by artificial signals. It's like trying to hear a whisper in a screaming crowd. Dr. Chen studied the ecological aspects. She found the planet's crystal structure was actually a massive natural computer, constantly processing light into life-sustaining patterns. The dark areas weren't dead. They were frozen, unable to process because the signals were wrong. The plan. Sarah gathered all the data and worked with Hope, Dream, and Light to develop a solution. It wouldn't be easy, and it wouldn't be quick, but it could work. Phase 1, Sarah explained to the assembled Vorath leaders through emotional projection and Hope's assistance. You need to shut down or shield all electromagnetic technology for one full pattern cycle. That was about 3 Earth months. This will give the planet time to stabilize its natural patterns. The Keeper showed concern. Without technology, how would they function? Phase 2, Sarah continued. We help you develop new technology that works with your planet instead of against it. Marcus has designed harmonic generators that operate on frequencies that enhance natural patterns instead of disrupting them. It's based on human music theory, the idea that certain frequencies work together while others clash. Amy added her part. Phase 3 involves creating a permanent monitoring system. Pattern readers who can detect when your technology starts interfering with natural processes. This way, you can keep advancing without destroying your home. The proposal created intense discussion among the Vorath. Sarah felt the waves of emotion, fear of giving up their technology, hope that their world could heal, uncertainty about trusting an alien species they barely knew. The dark period. The Keeper made the decision. They would try Earth's plan. Across the entire planet, the Vorath began shutting down their electromagnetic systems. It was like watching a city go dark, except instead of lights going out, it was patterns being silenced. Sarah stood on the crystal surface and watched the change. At first, nothing happened. The dark areas remained dark. The damaged patterns stayed broken. But slowly, very slowly, she began to see movement in the crystal. Deep within the planet's structure, light began to flow again. It started as tiny sparks in the darkness, like stars appearing at twilight. The sparks connected, forming threads of light. The threads wove together, creating simple patterns. The simple patterns grew more complex. It was healing, just as Amy had predicted, that at a pace that made sense for a planet-sized crystalline structure. The Vorath were struggling without their technology. They had to rely on natural light patterns for communication across distances, which was slower and less precise. They had to adjust their whole way of living. But Sarah watched them adapt with grace and determination. They remembered older ways of doing things. They rediscovered patience. During this time, Sarah's bond with Hope deepened. She learned that Hope was old by Vorath standards, nearly 3,000 Earth years. Hope had seen the planet change from brilliant to dying. Hope had volunteered for the mission to Earth knowing it might be one way, willing to sacrifice everything if it meant saving their world. "You gave up so much," Sarah said one evening as they stood watching patterns slowly spread across a formerly dark area. Hope's response was pure emotion, love for its world, determination to preserve it, and gratitude that help had come. Sarah understood then that this was what it meant to be truly alive, regardless of species. The willingness to sacrifice, to adapt, to hope even when things seemed hopeless. The turning point. 2 months into the shutdown, something remarkable happened. The planet began creating new patterns, ones the Vorath hadn't seen in generations. Beautiful, complex spirals of light that seemed to pulse with vitality. The dark areas were shrinking rapidly now, filling in with rainbow colors. Dr. Chen made an important discovery. The planet isn't just healing, it's evolving. The patterns are more sophisticated than the historical records show. It's adapting to the fact that the Vorath have changed. It's creating patterns that can coexist with technology, but only the right kind of technology. Marcus took this information and refined his harmonic generators, working with Vorath pattern singers, beings who could consciously create complex patterns. He developed technology that literally sang in harmony with the planet. When they tested the first generator, the planet's response was immediate and positive. The patterns nearby became brighter and more vital. "It works," Marcus shouted, his joy echoing Sarah's happiness. The Vorath around them created a celebration pattern so beautiful that Sarah wished she could somehow capture it to share with Earth. New beginnings. By the end of the 3rd month, the transformation was complete. The planet's surface gleamed with intricate patterns of light that flowed like auroras across crystal ground. There were no more dark areas. The world had healed, and in healing, it had become even more magnificent than before. The Vorath began reintroducing technology, but carefully now. Each new system was tested against the planet's patterns. They built harmonic generators across their world, creating a network that enhanced rather than disrupted natural processes. They established the Pattern Watch, a group dedicated to monitoring the planet's health. Sarah stood with the Keeper at a ceremony marking the completion of the healing. Through emotional communication, the Keeper expressed gratitude not just to Sarah, but to humanity as a whole. Humans had shared hard-won wisdom about balancing progress with preservation. Humans had listened when the Vorath couldn't speak in words. Humans had crossed the stars to help a species they barely knew. "We are not so different," Sarah responded, projecting her feelings carefully. "You taught us something too. You showed us that communication transcends language, that understanding requires patience and willingness to perceive in new ways. That healing is possible if we have the courage to change." When the mission team prepared to leave, Sarah felt genuine sadness. She had grown to love this crystal world and its people. Hope, Dream, and Light would be staying. They were needed to help their people maintain the new balance. Hope approached Sarah one final time. They stood hand in hand, crystal against flesh, while light patterns swirled around them. Sarah felt Hope's emotions: love, friendship, gratitude, and something else. A promise. The Vorath would never forget what humanity had done. They would be eternal friends and allies. "Will we see each other again?" Sarah asked, though she suspected Hope couldn't understand the specific words. The response was pure hope and certainty. Yes, somehow, someday, they would meet again. The universe had brought them together once. It would do so again. As the spacecraft lifted off, Sarah watched the crystal planet shrink below. She thought about everything that had happened. She had come here as a simple linguist who had stumbled onto an impossible assignment. She was leaving as something more, a bridge between worlds, a pioneer in understanding that transcended language. Legacy. Back on Earth, Sarah's work created a revolution in xenolinguistics. She established the Institute for Nonverbal Alien Communication, training others in her methods. She wrote extensively about the importance of emotional intelligence in first contact situations. She argued passionately that humanity needed to expand its definition of communication beyond words and sounds. The relationship between Earth and the Vorath homeworld flourished. Trade began. Humans offered technology guidance, while the Vorath shared their understanding of light-based energy systems. Cultural exchanges brought Vorath artists to Earth, where their light patterns became a new form of performance art that deeply moved human audiences. Years later, when Sarah was much older, she received a message from the Vorath. They had developed a new way to communicate across the stars, a system that could transmit emotional patterns through quantum entanglement. The message was simple but profound. It was hope, sending a pattern that translated to, "Thank you for listening when no one else could hear us. Thank you for seeing our world and finding it worth saving. You proved that understanding is more powerful than words, that compassion crosses any divide. You are forever in our patterns, Sarah Mitchell. You are forever our friend." Sarah stood in her office, tears streaming down her face, feeling the love and gratitude transmitted across light years. She had spent her life studying communication, and she had learned the most important lesson of all. The deepest communication happens not through language, but through the willingness to truly listen, to truly see, to truly care. The Vorath had come to Earth in desperate silence, and Sarah had heard them. In doing so, she had changed both their world and her own. She had proven that humanity's greatest strength wasn't technology or intelligence, but the simple human capacity to hear what others cannot say, to help when help is needed, to reach across the vast darkness of space and touch another soul with understanding. And that, Sarah knew, was what would carry humanity to the stars. Not ships or weapons or even words, but the profound ability to listen with more than ears, to speak with more than voices, and to understand with more than minds. To communicate, truly communicate, required the whole heart. The Vorath had taught her that, and she had taught them something in return, that help comes from unexpected places, that friendship recognizes no borders, and that healing is always possible if we have the courage to change. As Sarah looked up at the stars that night, she knew that somewhere among them, a crystal world gleamed with renewed life, its patterns singing a song of gratitude and hope. And she knew that this was just the beginning. Humanity and the Vorath, together, would continue learning from each other, growing together, building a future where understanding bridged every gap. The silent observers had spoken, and Sarah had heard them. In doing so, she had changed the universe forever.